Welcome, everyone, to episode 52 of Signs, Planets, and Stellar Rhythms. My name is Erik Roth, shamanic astrologer, here to talk about the upcoming Venus cycle. And this is going to go on from August 20th, 2023 until March 29, 2025. So we're going to talk about the major phases of this cycle, not all the individual dates that Venus may meet a planet or have other conjunctions or aspects. We're going to be looking at just the overall cycle itself and also where it's going to be rising in the sky. So the big highlights of this are the new Synodic cycle of Venus, phases of the Venus cycle, important dates of the Venus cycle, which essentially are the phases and the date of the next heliacal rise, and then Hydra and Venus, a little sharing about this heliacal rise date and how that's part of the overall tone of the entire 584-day period of this Venus cycle. All right, I'd like to give a shout out to venusalchemy.com and coming up with, well, all of their research and their work, particularly Kate and Costell. And now she's partnered with Sheridan Semple in their work. And so I'd like to just talk about the new Synodic cycle. This is their website. You'll see this image here celebrating the goddess within at venusalchemy.com. So in the middle of the retrograde period of Venus, so this is important, it has a similar vibe to the Mars Synodic cycle, in that right in the middle of that, we have this period where the cycle essentially begins, close enough. So as first visibility in the morning sky, Venus will be about 10 degrees from the sun. And this is when, from a shamanic perspective and alchemical perspective, that Venus is now visible in the morning sky. And this is what is called heliacal rise. So it's a relationship to the sun. So that's where that comes from Helios. The other thing about this is Synodic cycle. If you've never heard that word before, it references it's a planet or a star's cycle itself as it relates to the sun. So the starting point in its relationship to the sun. In this Venus's case, it's when it has a heliacal rise with the sun as the start and end date. So start of a new cycle, the end of a previous cycle. And all Venus cycles are about 584 days, give or take a few hours, or 19 months. And then over an 8-year span, it rises five different points across the sky, and 5 different signs, 5 different constellations. So this is a big part of what gave rise to the 5-pointed star and Venus's intimate connection with that star. And certainly the number 5, the number 8 are magical numbers for Venus, as well as the number 13, as Venus makes 13 orbits in that 8-year span. Okay. So in this case, this new Venus cycle is going to be in the sign of Leo. That's where it rises on August 20th. Now, August 19th, it's actually officially 10 degrees from the sun, but that's after the morning time. And so from an experiential perspective, most people won't be able to see it until the 20th, but some may be able to see it on the 19th. So I tend to interchange a little bit on the 19th and the 20th, even though the 19th is the official date when it comes to the Synodic cycle, but the experiential date would be the 20th of August, 2023. Here are the major dates and the periods of the phases. So the first phase is the descent of Venus. This is from August 20th to 23 to April 27th of 2024. That's I'm going to be going over each of these phases in this video here. And then the underworld phase of Venus is April 27, 2024 to July 11, 2024. That's the phase where Venus disappears in the glare of the sun, and it's on the opposite side of where Earth is. Okay, and then we have the ascent phase from July 11th, 2024 to March 1st, 2025. That's when Venus moves from the morning star appearance to the evening star appearance. And we use star to reference just from a symbolic perspective of this, oh, we've got this morning rise, we got this morning star. It's obviously it's a planet, but we use that interchangeably in this particular description of the Venus phases here. And then there's the metamorphic phase, which comes kind of in two stages. One is the stage where Venus is retrograde, beginning March 1st, 2025, and goes on until March 16th, 2025. And then it's in that the major or the deeper metamorphic phase, which is from the 16th of March to the 29th of March in 2025. Again, this is over a 19-month period, 584 days. So again, I'm not going to go into each of the individual, what's going to happen each and every month. That's for later videos to kind of hone in on each of these cycles. Now, if you really want to get into the deeper details of that, you can go to venusalchemy.com to take the courses that they offer, which move through all the different incarnations of Venus and celebrate Venus in a ceremonial and magical way. Okay, so this is coined by venusalchemy.com called the meta-goddess. This is essentially in shamanic astrology, from the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School from Daniel Giamario. He originally called this the overtone. And so in this case, this is, I've been using more and more the meta-goddess in this situation because it just makes more, it's kind of describes it a little bit more. Even though overtone shares a great deal too. But, one is, has the option of using one or the other, or you can use the word overstory, which Daniel Giamario uses too. So Leo, so Venus and Leo, all right? So Venus represents the archetypal feminine principle. This is a receptive force or kind of a yin in Chinese philosophy, yin energy. For Venus and Leo, it's kind of this receptive Leo, which is in itself an active force, or particularly a creative force. This is radiance and self-love expressing out to others, but at the same time receiving that creativity and love from others. The last time Venus went through this same Leo meta-goddess or overtone was back in 2014 to 2016. So there was if you look back at that time period, it was roughly around August 20th, 21st, 22nd, right in that zone when Venus rose heliacally back in 2014. So one gets to look at that more closely in the way that, if you're looking back at, if you're going into a Venus cycle yourself, like if you're having a return cycle, this is something that I'm not going to talk too much about in this because otherwise it'd be a much longer video. But every 8 years, we have Venus returns, meaning that during this window of a Venus synodic cycle, say in this case from August 20th or 19th, 20th to March 29th of 2025, if you have your birthday in the age 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48, 56, 64, 72, 80, 88. If your birthday falls anywhere in that zone between August 19/20, 2023 to March 29, 2025, you're also in a Venus return cycle. So this is it's an important thing. And this is kind of it's a deeper level study, if you will. So I'm just going over just the major synodic cycle here, but meaning that you being in a Venus return, this cycle would be of great importance to you. The incarnation of this Leo meta-goddess, it shows a deeper octave of the creative force that is owned by the feminine in this case here, along with working with our own inner self-love. So again, it doesn't matter about men and women and any other gender in between. This is sort of the we can call it the anima or the inner feminine here that is coming through, coming alive in each of us, and on a like a collective level for the world. But there's of course the individual Venus returns that affect 1/5 of the population. But in this case, again, we're all in this this Leo metagoddess. So it is our discovery process of learning confidence and courage at this time to envision our own path and see where it can take us. So it's like being able to step out from our, we can call it our old story, from where we've held ourselves back. And, you know, courage is like being able to see the risk, see the fear, and work with it anyway, not to repress it or dismiss it, but to work with it and be part of it as you step out into the next stage of your life, perhaps a project, perhaps a new job, perhaps a relationship, or stepping out into the world for the first time as a young adult. This is, you know, this is what Leo can help us and also help carve out and create our future. It's a very strongly visionary type of archetypal force, the sign of Leo. Okay, so let's take a look at the descent phase. This is the very first phase of Leo here. Now, officially, it begins with the heliacal rise of Venus on August 20th, 19/20th. But Venus is retrograde all the way until September 3rd of 2023. So any Venus Moon conjunctions in that time won't necessarily are counting toward the descent phase, even though it's part of the overall phase. So the descent phase follows the goddess through celestial gates, which are symbolized in the sky by Venus Moon conjunctions. And there are 7 to 8 gates that connect to each other and to each of our energy centers, which of course are the chakras. Now, in the ancient story of the descent of Inanna, this is where this originated back 6,000 or more years ago. They created a calendar based on the planet Venus and called her Inanna. And then there were other names, Ishtar, and other names that were used to describe her later on in the centuries after and the millennia after, all across the world. But they noticed that it connects within us, and they noticed the regular pattern of Venus. And so this as above, so below, as within, so without, Venus in the sky, and also the feminine within ourselves. There is this receptive force that we have within ourselves. In this case, this is the Leo incarnation version of that. So it's easy to find information now about the descent of Inanna. There's even a book about it, and there's other writings about what this means. And one of the interesting connections was a book by Clyde Hostetler called Star-Trek to Hawaii. Nothing to do with the TV series or the movies, but it was his research to discover how essentially Inanna and Venus spread throughout the world, and the knowledge of the cycle in the sky, the Venus Synodic cycle, and the various Venus Moon conjunctions, which were symbolized by these, like these energy moments, these gates, as Venus travels to the underworld and then travels out of the underworld. So these are things that you can also look up yourself. I don't know if the book Star Trek to Hawaii is in print anymore, so you may have to kind of look around on things like eBay or Craigslist or any other like used book places that might carry a copy of that. All right, so this descent phase has to do with the goddess giving up her vestments of power at each of those gates, typically around 7 or 8 gates. The standard is the 7. representing the chakras in the body. So it starts from the crown and goes all the way to the root chakra. And if there's an eighth gate, which in this case there is 8 gates in this this particular incarnation, that means that there's something called a death by intent. So at that point, Venus is giving up her royal robe. She's vulnerable to the underworld, and she's standing with her sister, Erik, which I'll talk about here in this underworld phase. So Erik says, well, all the beings that come here, they have to go through the death initiation to be part of this underworld. And so that's what Inanna had to do. But because she's a goddess and there is a lot of course, magic involved in this, she also comes back from that. Now, astronomically, Venus is on the other side of the sun at this time, and we can't see it with the naked eye. And that's why it's called the underworld phase. So she's in the hidden realm during this time. So it's anywhere from 60 to 75 days. It all depends on one's on the declination of Venus, on how your horizon line is, where you live. There's a lot of different factors, but 75 days is a good rule for this. So in this period, Venus is transitioning from a morning star apparition to an evening star apparition, meaning visible in the morning sky, to going in the underworld, to becoming invisible, then going into the evening sky to become visible again. And the dates of this period are from April 27th, 2024 to July 11th, 2024. And that's when Venus exits. Now, during this period is also we think of this as a death rebirth process into individual people, but also on a collective level with the feminine, there's a death rebirth process initiation going on too. This is a time where we face our fears on a shamanic level, and we surrender to this, we can call it this chrysalis stage that comes through, and we end up moving into an entirely new part of ourselves, and the new story of a relationship to the feminine comes through in a new way when Venus rises again, but this time in the evening sky by July 11th of 2024. That's again, we use this 10-degree rule, and 10 degrees is roughly when you extend your arm out at the closed hand, with your thumb sticking out. That's about 10 degrees in the sky. So if you're holding it up between two objects in the sky and they kind of fit the boundary of that, that's 10 degrees. And that's when Venus can be readily visible. Although, again, some people may be able to see this earlier. Again, depends on your horizon line, depends on the weather, and various other factors that play a role in Venus's visibility. But I use 75 days because that's much more easily seen by most of the Earth's population. Okay, the ascent phase. This is the phase where she's in the evening sky. She's risen, Inanna's risen from the underworld. She's vulnerable to the world, but now she's going through the gates to go from the root chakra, then the reverse order, from the root chakra up to the crown chakra. In that case, I believe that there's 7 major gates instead of 8. There's 8 on the descent, and then there's 7 on the ascent phase. So each Venus-Moon conjunction represents these chakras, which Inanna is getting her vestments of power back. And this is the time where she does that. And in each of us, can tend to be a very Jupiterian type of experience collectively. But if you're in a Venus return, it can also be very Jupiterian in its experience too. And this point, again, Leo sets the stage for the entire 584 days, but she's traveling through different signs as she's going through this. So each of those signs at each of those Venus Moon gates are also going to bring in something into the storyline as well. And if there's stars involved in this too, that also plays a role. So something to keep in mind as you're following Venus in the sky. And that's one of the powerful things that one can do when we're looking at Venus is experientially, we're following it. We're seeing it go through the constellations. It's moving away from the sun. It's connecting with various stars and planets. So there's these experiences that this planet has, but also we have too. And so those have meaning, astrologically have meaning, philosophically, spiritually have meaning to us. And then there's the metamorphic phase. Again, the primary part of this phase is when she's hidden in the glare of the sun, and Venus at this point is between the Earth and the sun. So that's from March 16th through March 29th. But when you start at the retrograde point, that's also, she's beginning sort of the preliminary part of that metamorphic stage. Like she's decided, okay, this is the time where she's got to go through a metamorphosis to the next incarnation. So she starts out Leo in whatchamacallit. She starts out Leo in August of 2023, and then she rises again in March of 2025. This is in the sign of Aries. That's the next, at Pisces. That's the next incarnation, heliacal rise of Venus. She's actually, prior to that, 8 years before that, it was Aries, and it was Aries for over 100 years. But it's now precessed. It's now moved into the sign of Pisces in that 8-year circuit. So something to look toward as, each individual on a collective level, but also if you're in a Venus return cycle, this is also a very powerful time. So the last time Venus did this was back in 2022, when Venus rose heliacally on January 15th of 2022. That was in the sign of Capricorn. So this represents the ending of the Capricorn metagoddess and the beginning of Leo here, August. But then in 2025, that represents the end of Leo and the beginning of Pisces. So again, this is the overtone / metagoddess coming through, and one to honor and connect with experientially, individually, ceremonially. So where will Venus rise here August 20th? So Venus is right here. And where this point is, and Venus is a little bit closer to the sun on August 19th. So it's not that much of a difference between the 19th and 20th here. But I've circled this because Hydra, this constellation, which is well below the ecliptic, which is this orange line going diagonally up and down here, from below to above. And now this glowing line of Cancer and Leo, the signs, the astrological signs of Cancer and Leo, this is that line here. So that's the dividing line of where currently the boundary between Cancer and Leo, and that changes over the centuries. Actually changes 1 degree every 72 years, depending on, that'll change. And then these constellations, they're precessing. So the constellations are moving the opposite direction of that. Okay, so we see this here, and we see the rise of the lion starting to come up here, although that won't be visible. That whole part of the sky is going to be kind of overlit, if you will, by the sun, because there's just too much of the sun energy right there. And most people won't be able to start to see it until roughly the end of the first week of September, second week of September. Then you'll get to start to see Regulus and some of the other stars as you go into September in the early morning sky. But Hydra and the crab are part of this Venus rise. So we just want to acknowledge that as part of that, more than in addition to the sign, not more than the sign, but in addition to the sign of Leo. And rising with Hydra. So Venus, as you can see on this map here, hit this ecliptic, which is, again, more up and down here at this time of this Venus rising. This represents where the path of the planets typically are and where the sun goes. But Venus is well below that, roughly about 8 degrees. And here's this blue line that's coming in. This is the Earth's projected equator. and they meet at the priestess constellation. So that's where the autumnal equinox point is for the northern hemisphere, and the spring equinox point is for the southern hemisphere. It's off the map, it's below the horizon here, but Hydra's, these two constellations are part of this. All right, so Venus is 8 degrees south of the ecliptic at the time of the heliacal rise, but north of the equator. And the constellation Hydra becomes a factor of influence astrologically. The crab is also part of Venus's rising, which lies on the other side of Hydra, with Venus between. So again, here's the crab and here's Hydra. The head, this is the head of Hydra right here. All right, so the constellation Hydra straddles part of the celestial equator and below it, but the immortal head of Hydra, so the constellation itself doesn't show, doesn't reference all the different heads of the constellation Hydra itself, or the creature called Hydra. But Hydra's head is below the crab, and the two were mixed up at one time in one of Hercules' 12 labors. Hercules defeated the Hydra, but didn't kill it. It buried the immortal head. And then the crab, in the story, the crab grabbed at Hercules' feet. So Hercules both defeated the crab and the Hydra. Of course, he had to solve these labors, these quest items, and that story, that quest of Hercules was essentially referencing Mars, the planet Mars, as it was transiting the 12 constellations. So there's things in there that relate to the labors that are celestial. So again, as above, so below. So the myth of Hercules is definitely a very celestial myth. At one time, Hydra symbolized the River Nile and also the River Jordan. So depending on, where you lived on the globe, because it looks like the connection of that looks like kind of a river type of constellation there. It was also part of the ancient symbols of Tiamat from thousands of years ago. Tiamat is this really ancient, what you might call sea monster, a creature that was a powerful symbol and defender of Earth, and representing, kind of connected with the goddess herself, the greater goddess of Earth. So on a spiritual, psychological level, Hydra, along with the crab, lends what lies underneath in the waters of Earth to Venus. The primal waters of Earth and the fierceness to protect are part of the story of this incarnation of Venus. So this is Hydra and the crab are lending some additional symbolism and insights, along with the sign of Leo, into this metagoddess, of this Leo metagoddess. So she's bringing that in along with the story of Inanna, as she's incarnating into this new form. So that will be a big part of this synodic cycle of Venus. Now, astrologically in the chart, I wanted to show this to give you a little piece of that. When Venus is at 10 degrees away from the sun, this is on August 19th, so it's before she typically becomes visible. Well, in this case, be August 20th. She's squaring, along with the sun, squaring Uranus and Jupiter. So there's the piece of this that they also play a role, Jupiter and Uranus, and that they could be playing a role when it comes to sort of a level of expansiveness and connection to pleasure and beauty in the world, but at the same time, like an instability, something that kind of shakes things up. So maybe this Leo metagoddess will really be shaking things up in the 19-month period here. At the same time, there's a greater expansion of what she brings into the world. So this could be a really intriguing metagoddess, Leo metagoddess, and something to look out for as we go forward. So thank you for being a part of this video. Please subscribe if you like this video, and or like hit the like button. Again, Erik Roth here, doing YouTube videos, but also I do this for a living: astrology readings, classes, events, astrocartography. I'm part of inspiralnexus.com. That's my website. And then I work with Caitlin Costell at mystaralchemy.com, where we're actually not far from launching a new star magic course beginning in October that deals with the stellar gateways. So something to look out for as in the coming over the next several weeks. There'll be notifications about that. So thank you all again, and happy Venus watching, and take care, everyone.